Good evening, everybody. We are at long last ready for some more House of Light. Um, we're kind of back to the usual story here, which is lots of work to do. I got out of work probably about an hour after the time I was supposed to start streaming, and then everything else has sort of followed on. So I've noticed the tendency is whenever I say I may not do a full broadcast, it usually winds up being a full length broadcast anyway. That may be true today as well, but I figured I might as well just caution that one of the things I want to try and do for next week is get a little bit more control back in terms of my just kind of my sleep schedule and such. And that will mean, sorry, I just got to toss out something. That'll mean sort of proper bedtimes and such. Now, I do have a full weekend ahead of me, but I'm also going to probably do a few. I don't know, there's a few things that I kind of want to do this weekend, particularly along the lines of the YouTube channel and such. So, like I said, I'll do my best. Obviously, one of the challenges that I potentially run into is if I go really late and there's nobody around to enjoy it, there's always the difficulty in deciding, okay, well, do I keep going and sort of just leave that for the YouTube channel, or do we cut it earlier? I've never had a good answer for that, if I'm completely honest. There's always sort of pros and cons. But let's play it by ear. Let's see how the evening goes. And I certainly enjoy playing Book of Hours, so it's certainly no hardship for me to go a bit later tonight if that's where we wind up. Now, the one thing that I did neglect to do before I started, I got my tablet out, but I don't have the pencil for it. So I'm going to take a quick moment. It should be in the other room. And then we will jump into the game in earnest. So I'll see you all in just a minute. I'll actually maybe get something to drink as well. Okay, so I put the kettle on. What I'll probably do is just step away for pour the tea when it's ready to go. But I figure you've all waited long enough. We might as well enjoy ourselves. I do know that I've been doing Book of Hours for a really long time now, and I would like to change it up a little bit in terms of the games that I'm running, but it feels appropriate to at least see this one through to the end, and I also don't see any value in rushing it, so yeah, we'll see where it goes. Now, we're at the start of the day. I think I had committed to a couple of things, so let's just see what the timer says. Nope, looks like we don't have any timers. I hope I made a few notes for myself. Now, if memory serves, I had been working in spring on opening up a few scale rooms. Yes, so we've got the sealed vault. Now, I'm actually not in a rush to open the sealed vaults. Oh, what have we got here? Right, a roast beef joint. I figure it wouldn't hurt to get a few other things open before we do the vault. Actually, maybe I'll make it so that the vaults are the last things that I open. Because I have enough to do over the course of a day that it doesn't strike me as a really big problem to set that sort of thing aside. Okay, So I'm going to need to take a look at my list in terms of the different skills that I wanted to level up. I think we've got some ideas here in terms of Anbury and Lapidary and Applebright Euphonies. I know the Applebright Euphonies, or don't know, but I suspect the Applebright Euphonies were because of the Sun Disfigured. But yeah, we're at the point here where I want to try and be somewhat sensible in terms of how I navigate the Tree of Wisdoms. And the fact is, we just have a lot of books that have sort of piled up in the house. So I think there's going to be sort of two pressures that I feel in terms of handling that. So one of them is going to be, because I've got so many books and I haven't really worked and engaged with them yet, I just want to get a lot of those read. And I want to get a lot of those read specifically so that I can, level things up inside of the Tree of Wisdoms. And then the other difficulty with that is that given enough time, right, once I get past some of the blocks that I have in terms of the skills or the levels that I have for certain aspects, once I sort of burn through all those books, I'm actually going to find myself without much to do. And so that will also give a motivation to sort of open the different books that are different rooms that have books in them. So I can't remember if the Honeyed Forbidding has any. I don't believe there's any in here, but there might be. Actually, I don't think there is in. There might be some in this room. It's always tough for me to remember these things. I do know there's a few books inside of the vaults, but that's actually one of the reasons why I'm avoiding going into them. But you'll also maybe notice that we did read our first Newman. Read our first... it's text that houses a Newman, I guess, would be the proper term. But in this case here, part of that is because, one, eventually I'm going to be running out of options. Like, that's going to be my the only thing that I can read. And then number two, that is going to help me open up some various rooms. So for instance, if I'm short on Grail, Lantern, or Moth, having something like the Sun's Weakness will be something that allows me to move a bit further through the house. So if you can just give me a minute, it sounds like the kettle's boiling, so I'm just going to pour myself some tea, and then we will start the session proper. Vanguard Master, good to see you. I know I owe you an account of the weekend, but I think this gives you a bit of an idea of how well it's going. I got out of got out of work about an hour after I was supposed to start the stream. So, but I do want to try and help you test. So I may, if I have time, it's probably more likely that's going to be Sunday. But we can talk offline. Yeah. No, I get it. But yeah, I do, where I can, I do want to help. But I'm starting to face some rather difficult realities in terms of the amount of time available. But yeah, my guess here, just looking at, I'm sort of staring down the like for my usual streaming stuff. I do I do the Monday broadcasts in terms, or not broad. Sorry, I do Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday for YouTube videos. And so I normally record those on the weekend. And last weekend I actually did 2 on Saturday and 2 on Sunday. I'm not really sure it was better for it, but it did. That was just kind of how I was managing the time. I'm going to try and make it so that everything gets done on Saturday, which is going to leave me completely wiped. But if I can get that done, then I imagine that Sunday will be the best time to do that sort of stuff. But we'll see. I'll follow up with you. The one thing I don't want to do, I do feel like there's still some stuff that I owe people that I want to, like, I want to get done. I want to follow up on. And I feel bad when I don't. And so I've really tried to be quite careful in terms of promising that I'm going to do something, because it just feels bad when you let someone down. So. Oh, that's great. Okay, cool. So, first of all, happy birthday. Or rather to your partner, business partner. Um, and yeah, we'll work it out. But my apologies for being a little bit of a flake. It is so I can try and sorry, I'm looking for my tablet now. I got the pen. Here we go. Um, I'm really not organized tonight, but sorry if you have to hear me shuffling around while I'm looking for um, my stuff. But basically, yeah, I'd rather be disappointing in terms of committing time than disappointing in terms of saying that I'll commit something and then not do it. But either way, good luck, because I'm sure I'm not the only tester, and I know you're looking to get things as good as they can be. Okay, so I've got my tablet now after a long and winding search. Let's see where I was putting my notes. Okay, so so we had Meniscate Reflections, which I believe I was working with Anbury and Lapidary. And then, so there's two different things that I can do. If I'm interested in leveling up more preservation, I can actually put that towards Tridesma Hyra. I'm less inclined to do that, though, because we actually have a lot of different texts that already use Tridesma Hyra. So our next option would be Applebright Euphonies, which is Bosk, and that we need 4. So I think we will use, and this may be different from what I talked about before, but I think we're going to level up Meniscate Reflections, and then we'll level up Applebright Euphonies with the memories that I have. And in fact, one other thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to work out what I can do over the course of the day to see if I can maybe get myself a few other improvements. So let's see. Okay, so first of all, Meniscate Reflections, I want to get that up to level 6, I believe. Yes. Okay, so I need 5 memories. Okay, so we'll say 5 forge/edge. Applebright Euphonies I don't think is going to take that much. Yeah, so that's also going to be 5. That's 5 Grail and Sky. Now, one thing I would like to look at would be what I can do with the sun's weakness. So again, that's a Grail, Lantern, or Moth. Grail, Lantern, or Moth movement. Now, the other thing that I want to reflect on is that I've sort of said I'll keep the vaults at the very end. So in this case, that limits me to the Wing-Haunted Cave, the Gaping Darkness, looks like it's just those two, actually, the Wing-Haunted Cave or the Gaping Darkness. And it would seem to me that the Wing-Haunted Cave is probably the better of the two, because we don't really have anything with Moth right now. So if we take Mrs. Kill, she starts with 2 Grail. So for that we can use the tool. which will give us the 1. We can use Arab, which is good for 2. That brings it up to 5. Now, as far as memories go, we can give the sun's weakness. So that takes us up to 10, at which point we're going to need another 2. And the easy answer to that, in my view, is just to use a witching to sane. And that gets us to 12. So we'll use 2 for Mrs. Kill. Okay, so all told, we need 12 elements of the soul. So let's actually just see if we have that. So 7. So there's 9, 10, 11, 12. Now, I'll want to massage this a little bit, obviously, because there's going to be the... Actually, you know what? I don't even need to worry about that, because the metal will take me through with the metal will take me through in terms of leveling up Meniscate Reflections. So this is actually pretty useful. This gives me effectively all of my elements of the soul. The only thing I'm really missing here is the whisk, which I would normally use for cooking. I think we're marinating no, we're roasting a beef joint here. Am I really roasting more than one? Huh. Oh, here we go. Now we're marinating here. So, yeah, so I can use all of these things to still check out Crowcross Sands, do all the other fun things. So let's do that. What has the sea seeded today? And a walk on the moor. Use pentamers and precursors. Gather in spring. The gorse is bright on the land's nape. Okay, so as far as memories for the Meniscate Reflections are concerned, I can actually get one right away by just chucking out some of the sand. So we'll do that here. Sulfea, how are you doing? And hello to Tux, and hello to the animated Henlo there. Speak with Mrs. Kill. Mrs. Kill's mood always improves when I drop by. Mrs. Kill stands ready to help. You always cheer me up, she says morosely. So the reason why I wanted to go through it in this more ordered way is with this many elements of the soul left, there is a pretty good argument for me to try and do more with my day. Basically, I want to see if there's something that I can do to improve improve my levels in the various skills that I need. So for instance, we're moving up Meniscate Reflections. One of the next things that I would like would be something like Stone Stories, which would give me 7... or sorry, we'd need 7 of that. Which actually makes me wonder why I'm... Oh, sorry, or Wolf Stories, which are Scale and Moon. Stone Stories is Scale and Nectar. Actually, no, probably the easiest one for me to do right now is just to work out Tradisma Hyra. So that one, we need 6. So this is good for 2, 4, 5. Okay, so at the start, let's just take Calcite Supplications, Wonderful Shape. Actually, let me just double check that there isn't another Tradisma Hyra sneaking around here. Okay. So the question for me here is, do I have the elements of the soul required to bring these to the level that I need? So you've got 6. I can get 8 from the Arab and 8 from a memory. But I am using up all my Arab otherwise. So if I go I guess if I do Leaves and Thorns in a memory, we can read the wonderful shape. So I'm going to do that. Let's take the metal. I'll read Fekri's Herbery. Okay, so that gives me another Grail text to read. Now, it's not going to be that hard to read the Trides Mahaira, or to level up the Trides Mahaira, so I think I'm also going to read the Morphe Codex in this case. So that we can do with the Pale Desk. And that's a matter of the appropriate level of Moon. So Edict's Marshal's an option there. I'd prefer something a little lower. Magaphine Mysteries doesn't do the trick. So I have 3. Unfortunately, I need a bit more than that, so as wasteful as it seems, I am actually going to go for the Edict's Marshal. Or I would if I had the right values. Alright. So something with edge then. Actually, probably the Vagabond Desk. Actually, I guess it doesn't have to be that mysterious. I could just use a desk with Moon. So Magaphine Mysteries. We'll take the Lunar Globe. And then the Morphe Codex. Moon, a culmination. I can master this mystery. Enough Moon to match Mystery Moon. Okay, so I'm certainly on the way as far as skills go. I don't know if I want to spend that much time thinking about wolf stories and stone stories right now. Like, it doesn't hurt, but I think I kind of have what I need at the moment. So let's go. We'll use the metal at the Sweet Bones. There's not much work on offer in Brandkrug, but I can find 6 pence worth of odd jobs, or add a coin for to find visitors seeking, employment. And then what else? I'm just gonna double check a couple of things here. So, yeah. Where'd you go? Okay. I think I'm good. Okay. Still have a lot of elements of the soul that I'm not doing things with right now. I did want to spend time with the chickens, but I think what I'll do here, we'll use the health to draw up water. We'll still get the grapes from the garden. We're going to talk with Mrs. Kill, so I can't chat with Tuppence and Terrence right now. But we can still go into the garden. Remembering I can't use Leaves and Thorns. So that's the gardening taken care of. Assuming that I have another nectar. Yeah, there we go. Moth orchid is soft as velvet to the touch, except when it changes. Okay, I think we are ready to get going for the day. And it's a sunny day, so that will help with Applebright euphonies, but I'm not expecting too much else. Although what I am going to do is just adjust the order here a little bit. Alright, Mrs. Kill stands ready to help. You always cheer me up, she says morosely. Midwife's assistant, as somber as autumn, as kind as autumn. She also likes her beer. Mrs. Kill has seen more of the world than she usually lets on. Conversations with her yield the occasional surprise. Collaborate Arab. My pride will find an echo in theirs. Boosts Grail and Edge. When something is given to the sea, it rarely returns. Although, of course, I did. Oh yes, I should probably be working on that now. So as far as Edge and Forge are concerned, there are a few memories that I can bring up here. So I want to be a little careful with this because I do still need to preserve the... so what I'll actually do here is I'll set aside 1 metal and then 2 Fost for Applebright euphonies. So one option here is to read something with contradiction. So here we go. I've already mastered this, but I could reread it and perhaps recall a memory. And then we'll do the same for the for pattern. So I think the last one we read was Against Vitru. No, we read On the Winding Stair. So Traveling at Night, Volume 3. Now, if I want, I can also apply the Fet and the Tryst, but what I want to think about now is, do I have... So I've got 3 of the 5 that I need already for the Forge and the Edge. So the question is, do I feel like I can get the Forge and Edge through talking with Mrs. Kill or through other means without using these elements of the soul? Because, of course, these are going to be ones that I'll also use to get memories for... Oh, yeah, actually, sorry, I guess I was going to use these... elements of the soul. Oops. So, impulse doesn't help us. Hindsight, intuitions, again, those are things that Mrs. Kill might give me. Patterns we're getting. Storms, Mrs. Kill might give us. Intuitions, fear, regrets. Contradictions we're getting. Foresight we might get from Mrs. Kill. Gossip, Salt doesn't give us what we need for Anburian, or for Menescape Reflections. Secret Thresholds, I don't believe we get from Mrs. Kill, but wouldn't be relevant to Menescape Reflections. Confounding Parables would be helpful because we can use that with Applebright Euphonies, and Mrs. Kill can't give us that. So, let's go to the Pale Desk. We will, I guess we'll do... I think we've done all of these again, so let's start with the other line and work our way around again. So we can do all the music simply because we don't, we know that Mrs. Kill's not going to give us that. Although we are starting to run out of elements of the soul, or of desks rather. So Singlefoot songs. The other thing that's nice about this is that I should be able to use something like the Applebright Euphonies before we get what we need for Menescape Reflections. All right. I also need to remember that I can get Sea Holly in the summer. So this is a little bit of a waiting game now, but I'm okay with that because we have a really clear idea in terms of where this, where we're going to go with all of this in the main playthrough. I've carried a memory like a flambeau safe through the mazes of night. Now, I should probably figure out what I want to do with the Wild Surmise, although it may just be something I hang on to straight until Numa, because it is reasonably versatile. It's got three... it does have three different aspects. So I think salt, the pneuma weather. What else? Anyways, there's not as many. These are a little hard to get a hold of. So, eagerly we anticipate our work. All right. So we've got the element of the soul. Let's add the tool now. Proffer a tool. I can lend my assistant something to help increasing their abilities. You'll still be able to use this tool. We already have a Witching Tisane, which is nice, although if I need, we can always make another one. Alright, an ingredient for a higher purpose. So, marinated beef, tangy with the harbingers of a roastful destiny. So the drawback here is that in this particular slot, I can't do anything cooking-wise, but I can open up the other kitchens when the time comes. So, as I used to say in my youth, the day is done, and so am I, but I've earned my pay. So in this case, we're going to restore the metal. Aside from the grand staircase, are there correct locations for items, etc. in this? That's the only thing that I've picked up so far. Curious if it's the only thing or if I've missed something. There's probably something about the grand staircase that you may not realize until you do a second playthrough. And I actually, one of the blogs points out that most people have not realized this. It's not a major thing. It's just a fun little touch that they added in the game. Just trying to think about the correct places for things. I'm just going to read the description here. It is spring. The landlady has served me a slice of her stargazy pie with the pilchard heads poking cheekily through the hot crust. So far as placement in the house... I don't believe there is anything in terms of placing an item on a certain pedestal or resting place that that is as deterministic as that. So in Salons, for instance, you are going to be required to have certain items of certain aspects to match the guests that you have, but I know that's not what you're asking. There are a couple of mysteries in the game. One of these I actually didn't get the first time I played through. But there are a few secrets of the house which will require a combination which is not necessarily revealed through looking at the aspects. And see, like, so what I mean by that would be, you know, I'll look at my bed, for instance, and I've got, you know, here it says it'll accept a restorative and a beverage, and here it says it'll accept fatigued and malady, fatigued and malady, and so on and so forth. And there are a couple of cases where if you read certain texts, you will be hinted at in terms of certain combinations which are not necessarily listed on those workstations or those rooms, but they are actually permissible and you can get certain things from them. But that again isn't exactly what you're looking for. I'd be willing to say I believe it is just the grand staircase that will have specific places you're supposed to put things. The rest of the sort of right places for things tend to be more, you know, you'll unlock. So I could put it to you this way. I'll try. I'm sort of dancing around the issue without, and I'm not being clear through it. There are definitely hidden treasures of the house. There are a few different hidden treasures of the house, in fact, but there's actually something that is specifically referred to as a hidden treasure of the house in certain workstations, and I'll use workstations broadly. So this could basically be anything that you're putting elements of the soul into. But I do consider those distinct from, the grand staircase, which you're specifically asking about, which is, do I need to put the hush house key, on the bathroom, on top of the toilet, so you don't lose it or anything like that. Yeah, no, I can answer without spoilers. And I mean, like, so I also kind of know, for instance, like, every once in a while, I think you were here during this, but I don't think this is too bad on its own. Sometimes you can, quote unquote, spoil something and make people realize that there are mysteries they didn't even think to look for. So, for instance, you don't know what was in here, but there was definitely something in here. And I'm not going to tell you how many of those there are in the game. That is not a hidden treasure of the house that's a hidden treasure of some kind, but that's not what I'm referring to when I talk about hidden treasures of the house. So yeah, with that in mind, there's definitely a few things that catch people by surprise when they sort of realize just how many little surprises are waiting for them. I mean, even in the main menu of the game, there's a surprise, which I noticed on the subreddit. People are still discovering for the first time. It's actually quite exciting. Actually, I should have read the blog that Weather Factory put out for the Lucid Tarot, but we'll do that a little bit later into the game. But no, and that's. The honest answer to your question, Selphea, as best as I can tell, is those are the only ones about certain locations. But the one thing I didn't want to do, and the reason why I sort of struggle answering this question sometimes, is that I realize that there are ways of answering certain questions, or that there are hidden assumptions built into certain questions that can lead people to not look for interesting things. And so this is why, I don't mind showing that particular sneaky nook, because I think that might have actually been the first one that there's another one that I found first. But yeah, like, making people aware of stuff like that, I think allows them to be delighted. And the one thing I don't want to do is give an answer that potentially leads someone to think they don't need to look for a few of the other things, which may be a little more dependent. So I'd put it to you this way. There are certain combinations that require a very specific workstation and a very specific item. And 9 times out of 10, that will be revealed by reading certain books. But of course, the order in which you read the books, the things that you're bringing into the game, there are a few things that will determine whether or not you get that. But yeah, to most directly answer your question, I think it's just the Grand Descent that's the one that's going to have you, that's going to expect you to put things in certain places. All right, Fekri's Herbery, the early wisdom of Isen Fekri, at that point a traveling healer, much later the secretary salvant of the Curia of the Isle. As a Scaptodon, Isen may consume only that which is found in the earth, so he is best with root lore. Isen identifies a pale seaweed found on the beaches of Cornwall as a useful source of rose and winter aspect. His tone here is a little guilty, perhaps because he's showing an interest in the sea produce, which might be thought unwise for a Scaptodon, and perhaps because his proposal to name it Ava's Lock suggests a tiny crush on the Pale Lady of Brandkrug. See? I'm a little too direct, so if I don't know something's possible, I'm likely not to try. Now I know to try the unlisted aspects and look for hints of those, so that helps. Yeah, so I do think that the design of the game prevents me from playing this exactly. So there was a certain point where, especially in Cultist Simulator, I sort of said an uninteresting way to play this game seems to be to just brute force every combination, because there's so many of them, and that just, it doesn't seem consistent with what the game's trying to do, and it doesn't seem consistent with what seems like the best use of my time in the game. But I am finding with the cooking, there aren't enough tips I think anyway. I don't know if there's enough tips for me to find every single recipe. There are a few. I think there are a few things that are worthwhile there. It's not. I don't want to. I don't want to suggest that it's. How do I put it? I don't want to suggest that it is it's a complete waste to. Yeah. So sorry. Like okay. Sorry. Let me backtrack. So it's not bad if people want to play that way. And I think for me, I haven't quite been able to find a way to get where I need to go with the cooking without trying a bit of experimentation like that. But in general, I have tended to find it a bit more rewarding, and at least for me, a little bit more consistent with how the game works, to try and either use a really good feeling about something. So it's like, I feel like I should be able to do X, and try to do X. And generally what that does is that it sort of starts to infect my brain a little bit, and I wind up being able to do things. So I'll give you an example based purely on this entry. Now, this will be a little bit of an unfair example because it relies on some of what I'm running into with the House of Light expansion, but I think it'll still be a useful. Introduction. So we've got Fekri's Herbery, and I'm going to read the text again just to give you an idea of some of the things that we might be able to unpack out of it. So Fekri's Herbery, the early wisdom of Isin Fekri, at that point a traveling healer, much later the secretary salvant of the Curia of the Isle. Now, later on, when we found the Lighthouse Institute, Fekri is in fact going to be an option to hire as one of the secretary salvants. Okay. So I am reading. As a Scaptodon, Isin may consume only that which is found in the earth, so he is best with root lore. So I don't know if this feature of Scaptodons had been identified before or not. Scaptodons had been referred to in Cultist Simulator prior to that, and there is the Scaptodon Fang. It is rare for the Lionsmith to make Scaptodons now, but they are difficult to kill, and they live a very long time. Right, so now we have a little bit more of information in terms of what exactly Isin Fekri is. Right, so we have a Fang. They can be killed. They're difficult to kill, and specifically they are made by the Lionsmith. Although it is also worth mentioning that there was also an instance where we've heard of entities sort of learning the Lionsmith's ways and being able to make certain things. So we've got this introduction here that Isin Fekri is a Scaptodon, and we also now know that Scaptodons apparently can only consume things which are found in the earth. Then there's the last part. Isin identifies a pale seaweed found on the beaches of Cornwall as a useful source of rose and winter aspect. His tone here is a little guilty, perhaps because he's showing interest in sea produce, which might be thought unwise for a Scaptodon, and perhaps because his proposal to name it Ava's Locks suggests a tiny crush on the Pale Lady of Brankrug. So this is the item he's referring to here, right? Ava's Locks, a pale rack washed up on the beach by Brankrug. There's the rose, there's the winter aspect. But there is actually an earlier mention where Fekri is actually talking about specifically enjoying the fish suppers of Brankrug. And what's so interesting about that is that when you go to invite him to a salon, when you do the salons, your different guests have certain preferences in terms of food and drink. So, for instance, Ibn al-Adim will not have any alcohol, and this has a certain suggestion in terms. When you know a bit about his background, you have a pretty good idea in terms of why. Some people, in fact, most of them will actually have the same aspect for the food and drink. So Serena, for instance, wants forage food and drink, whereas Stanislav John Schaller wants heart food and drink. But in the case of Isin Fekri, right, the Scaptodon who is now starting to show an unhealthy interest in the sea, he actually wants moon food and sky drink. So the question might be why? And what you can appreciate here is if you hire someone in winter, you get a fisherman, and the fisherman has moon and sky aspect. If we take a look at Pilchards, right? 2 moon, 1 scale. Also has heart. We can take a look at the mackerel, right? Moon, scale, heart. And then, of course, we have the pickled versions of them, but I think you kind of get the idea here. Every reference that we have to fish contains moon, right? Secrets are soft, night is softer still, the sea speaks, it is not always wise to listen. And so in this case here, we know a bit about Isan Fekri from reading the book. We know a little bit about his interests from the food that he eats. And we, again, at no point did the game really explicitly say, fish have the moon aspect, right? And Isan Fekri wants moon stuff because he likes fish, but you take all of those little bits and pieces. Well, yeah, so this is the thing, Selfie, right? It's not like I sat down and I read Isan's, hello, Takri, how are you doing? I think you were broadcasting tonight. I actually was thinking on my way home, you mentioned really liking Waking Life, and I think you said you haven't seen A Scanner Darkly yet. I think, anyways, we'll chat. I'll send you a message, but I hope you're doing well. But yeah, so just to be clear on this, Solfae, like this is not the first thing I thought about when I read Fekri's Herbery. I've been through this a few times and I've interacted with Isan Fekri, and there's, a few other details. And I can tell you Ibn al-Adim in the base game, in Cultist Simulator, you have lots of different patrons. So for instance, Olympe Bichet. Oh, you saw it when it first came out. There you go. So Olympe Bichet, editor of the Karashim Review. She's one of the tutor characters, or one of the patrons in Cultist Simulator. You have a gentleman named Count Jannings. He's also a tutor. And, just like the enemies that you face, the different investigators and such, they all have the mortal aspect. And of course, it would make sense that they have the mortal aspect. You are dealing with, you're dealing with people. But what you may not notice when you first play the game is that Ibn al-Adim is also a patron, and he'll get you to do certain tasks and so on. But Ibn al-Adim does not have the mortal aspect. And if you look on Wikipedia, you will find out that Ibn al-Adim is in fact a historical figure, which implies, if it's the same person, that he would be many centuries old. And of course, because he does not have the mortal trait, it is actually quite likely that he is the same Ibn al-Adim. So, again, the game relies quite a bit on implication, and I do think that these things are specifically designed so that you realize it as you go by. And I don't even necessarily think it's a question of intelligence, although I do think that there is a benefit to... so obviously there's a certain degree of reading comprehension, right? If you're someone who just sort of skips through the text of games, and just to be clear, I know writers in games who skip over the dialogue in other games. So this is a way to play games. This is a way lots of people play games. But it is one of these things where it's sometimes just moving your mind into a different state when it comes to playing these sorts of games. Because again, you can unpack quite a bit more. It's one of these things where sometimes you'll see people play a game, even a game like this, but some games you'll see someone do something, and it's like, how did I even know to do something like that? And in the case of Book of Hours, there are definitely some cases where I've done it by intuition and it just works out. But oftentimes, if I'm honest with myself, the origins for that are usually just I've read the books and I've reread the books, and I read a few more books and then I realize something in context, and then I sort of move on and so on and so forth. And these are things that sort of build up over time. You sort of take an interest in things and you start sort of realizing the different connections, and then eventually you sort of wake up and realize, okay, we have a bit more. And again, I picked this example here because it was immediately available to me. It's not that, Isan's nature is necessarily that big of a mystery in the game. It's just a bit of an example in terms of how there's the first thing that you read, and then once you get a little bit of a familiarity with the setting, there may be a few more layers. And then after that, you sort of realize, oh, hang on, so there's a few other things that I might be able to do, and then you start sort of putting the pieces together. And this is why, you know, people like using tools like Obsidian, or in my case, I just like writing physical notes. There's lots of different ways to engage with the material. But it's also, that to me is where the fun lies, right? Because it ceases to be a game that you're just passively absorbing from a developer, but you're actually taking an active role yourself in terms of the types of stories that you're telling and experiencing. Yeah, well, I use a spreadsheet usually for the what am I trying to say, the crafting. I've got a big spreadsheet for that. And obviously, there's lots of people who do that sort of thing on, like, if you want a full breakdown of all the different items that you can craft in the game, there's a few people who've maintained different spreadsheets, but I do kind of enjoy the process of discovering it all over again. All right, so we're using this so that I can read another Grail book, but let's work through what I've already. Okay, we're gonna take care of the joint of beef later. Roast a beef joint, a dish with edge, forge, heart, and scale. Our fathers of old were robust, stout, and strong, and kept open house with good cheer all day long, which made their plump tenants rejoice in this song. Oh, the roast beef of Old England, and Old English roast beef. Henry Fielding, the Grub Street Opera. What is the Grub Street Opera? I think I should check out the Wikipedia page for that. Screblerus Secundus. Why, that's that's a name related to Jonathan Swift. Have any of you ever heard of Jonathan Swift? And another beef joint. This one's going to be for the worker when the time comes. Just not sure where to put it. There will be a test on a modest proposal next week. I'm running out of places to put my food. Hello, Beth, kinda, sorta. All right, more dripping. All right, so we can just use lantern to roast the roast marinated beef, tangy with the harbingers of a roastful destiny. And we're good to continue. Oh, no, we're not. I want to read a book. Ooh, I did not do myself any favors here. I think I'm going to have to give up a tryst to do this now. So we'll take the satisfaction. We'll take the... Where are you? So it's the... I think it's the Callicite Supplications I want to read now. So we had Leaves and Thorns. Yeah, that's the 8 that we need. Alright, I can master this mystery. Enough Grail to match Mystery Grail. I mean, technically, you can also make the same claim about the term soap opera. I'm not sure most people realize that soap opera was in fact because like Procter and Gamble would be sponsoring your favorite shows. I mean, now I guess it's all Amazon and Apple. Okay, Knock, familiar passage. Traveling at Night, Volume 3. The Annotated Dream Journals of Christopher Alopoli, sometimes called the only readable occultist, literate, entertaining, bewildering. Alopoli's disquisitions on fire and the unburnt god are interrupted by passages of distractingly erotic poetry addressed to Baldemera. To reach the stag door, I believe that all you really need is to want something enough. But I've never wanted anything that much, except, of course, Baldemera. And I'm very much afraid that, the knot in the story is this. What Baldemera wants is the stag door. But here's something I learned in Persia. Perhaps it'll teach you what you want. Pattern, something fits just right. Sorry to stumble over the words there. The Other Line, one of Samuel Savage's more thoughtful works, an allegorical play about the city Clarity, a city that is also a book, and the sentences which inhabit it. The Lord's Proverbial and the Lord's Disquisitional war in the streets of Clarity, while the punctuants get drunk on ink and supply the jokes, though by Savage's usual standards there aren't very many jokes. The final act sees the Lord's Proverbial unsealing the city Clarity's gate to expel the population into the unknown. The formula that they use for the unsealing is a real one. It can be used with knock and preliminal meter to create a gate sign of power. And again, I know the lore is always something that people are interested in, and I do sort of face two challenges, which is number one, I would hardly consider myself an expert in terms of all of the ideas in the setting. But second of all, sometimes I think there is a lot to be said for the knowledge that you put the effort in and you sort of make sense of yourself. I know some of you have been subjected to me reading the Schopenhauer essay on thinking for oneself, and there is just something to be said for that knowledge that you've earned, that you've put the effort into. It's something that will stay much clearer in your own head than just sort of reading somewhere else and sort of say, okay, I guess that's it, right? You don't want somebody else to do the work for you, or to borrow something attributed to Euclid talking to Ptolemy. There is no royal road to geometry. But for those of you, so Samuel Savage has been set up in Cultist Simulator as well, but again, this game doesn't require you to have played Cultist Simulator. But it is pretty clear from this book when it says that you have the preliminal meter with knock. The formula for unsealing is a real one. But what you may want to think about would be, so there's a few questions that I think would come out of this, which is, what role does speech have in not just what we as human beings use speech for, right? I think that's kind of a given. But there's actually a specific role in speech. Speech is called something in the more occult parts of more occult references inside of the game. And there are also groups which are dedicated to silence. And these things may be related. And so when you see a story about, the city Clarity, and, this seems like a bit of a fun yarn, but inside it contains a real formula, and it specifically relates to the end of the story, where the Lord's Proverbial unseal the city Clarity's gate to expel the population into the unknown. There may be something that's related to some of the things that you might find inside of the Tree of Wisdoms, for instance. And that would be just, so I don't necessarily offer that as something that's going to help you make progress inside of the game. But for those of you that sort of want to know a little bit more in terms of the setting and such, and maybe want to try and find some interesting ideas to follow in terms of, just sort of get past a point where maybe you're sitting down and just reading a wiki and taking it from someone else. Like, what you can do is you can take an idea like that and say, speech does actually seem to come up, and speech does seem to come up specifically in relation to a few other big moments inside of the setting. So maybe we can tease that out a little bit. And when I see a reference to speech inside of a book or on a card or something like that, I might want to to take a note of that and maybe see if there's more that I can find out about all of the different perspectives on speech and the role that it plays in more arcane concepts. All right, Perugian Diaries. In 1907, at the age of 18, Christopher Olapoli left Strathcoyne's household to study theology at the University of Perugia in Italy, enrolling under the name Christopher Strathcoyne. For 4 years since his adoption from a Bristol orphanage, Olapoli served as Strathcoyne's pupil and protege, but his relationship with this austere and secretive man was always complicated. His journal confides, "I still think Fraser's intentions are good. Certainly he agrees, but I never understood the final goal of his investigations. He was never prepared to enlighten me, and good intentions or not, I can no longer bear the stream of eyes. We've agreed to part almost amicably." I will mention that the dream of eyes, I believe, comes up when you talk with Fraser Strathcoyne. And of course, because he is in the library, he's usually looking for information, and so you may be able to find out a little bit more about his investigations the more you interact with him. Olapoli left Perugia in 1909 without completing his degree. He had long lost interest in his studies, and the latter half of his journal is concerned with his studies of Umbrian folk songs and notes towards his own compositions, which are of widely varying quality. One of the better ones, In the Marshes of Night, suggests he visited the site of the old Lake Fucinus near Ortuccio. And you will hear, once you get to the nocturnal period, there are other references to Ortuccio, which of course gives us another little mystery to hang our interests on. The Wainscott Histories, subtitled Stories from Behind the Walls, a miscellany of non-traditional histories, including battles not generally acknowledged and countries which appear on no map, told in a playful, apparently fictional manner. Gore does not mention the Mansis directly, but constant coy metaphorical references to ascending the staircase of years, to the doors of sleep, and to the blue light of dawn suggest he had commerce with the unseen world. It was common in that time to speak of the division of the sun, by which contemporaries understood the eruption of barbarian forces and of their uncouth gods. There's the contradiction for Menescape Reflections. Singlefoot Songs. As Father Stanislav John Schaller, priest and diplomat, writes of his time on the slopes of Huashan, near the Grove of Green Immortals, but never too near. Schaller's relations with the grove are cautious. It's a library of the tree, but under the hand of the hour named Applebright. In time, however, Schaller comes to be more sympathetic to the Applebright, which he suggests causes harm only when so invited. The Singlefoots of the title are one-horned, one-footed hill things with sweet but powerful voices, powerful enough to open the mountain. The Singlefoots sometimes trample pilgrims, sometimes heal them, sometimes coerce them to enter the mountain and become Singlefoots. Schaller explains that when he found the last becoming too tempting, he decided to return to his homeland. Okay. And finally, The Wind's Ruin, the second volume of the Meditations of Abbot Thomas of the Abbey of the Black Dove. Abbot Thomas speaks of his time as a raider, when his name was not Thomas but Toke, scything the sea, striving for plunder. Abbot Thomas clearly regrets his storm years, and much of the book is taken up with his thoughts on penitence. But there are hints that he also misses those years and the companionship of his sword brother, ship brother, Trygeave. All right, so we've got everything that we need to be able to level up Applebright Euphonies, so I'm going to start on that right now. I'm no expert, but I'm no dabbler either. And I think I don't have much else to do right now. I think we'll kind of just digest what we already have. All right, this tool has boosted their aspects appropriately, so I think the time has come for us to use the sun's weakness. The sun's sins and the sun's scars are our salvation. There are histories where they will trap us. I can discuss a memory with my assistant. This will use the memory, but boost the assistant's abilities for the rest of the day. And so the last thing we'll do is give her the Witching to Sane, and we can call it a day on the levels. Of course, we'll still move. We'll still talk with her to get the memories we might need. Used up all the room for Ava's locks, huh? Ooh, packages. At this point, I think I'm just gonna put it all on the bridge. Moth orchid is soft as velvet to the touch, except when it changes. A little water splashes on the stones of the well to nourish the mosses there. So this one, I don't think I have room. Oh, there we go. Pluck the grapes from the vine. So I don't think I have enough time for any more grape collecting. If I had used the water to restore my my heart, that might have, or health or core rather, that might have changed, might have been different, but I have to sort of work with the turn as I've played it. Alright, so we'll do another round at Crowcross Sands. Take a long walk along the ocean's side. If I know what to look for, I might find something the ocean has forsaken. So rhyme and remembrance. Again, not a coincidence that there is a moon aspect related there. And walk on the moor. Clamber up the long reaches of the moors behind the village. Lean into the wind's fluttering fist. If I know what to look for, I might find something among the rocks. On we go. I may take a minute to make another witching to Sane. But for now, I'll just focus on leveling up my skills. Another fruit plucked from knowledge's tree. Alright, memories don't last long outside books, but it's made the difference for the day. So, one last step. Witching to Sane, to mend a broken heart, to color a pale soul. I can offer my assistants something to drink. This will increase their aspects. They'll also be glad of the refreshment. And I think we're at the point here where I can just properly sort these, because we know, in terms of Anbury and Lapidary, we are going to use that to level up Menescape Reflections. We need 2 more memories. We already have 2 inside the collection here. Better now. Okay. The Morphe Codex. Priestess of the Sisterhood of the Knot claims to have discerned the true meaning of the Thunderskin's birth. The writer credits the Red Grail, the Ring Yew, and the Horned Axe, the powers the Sisterhood reveres, with agreeing a final treaty between the Hours of the House and the Hours they displaced. The Thunderskin loved the Yew, and the Grail destroyed him as restitution for the slaying of the Horned Axe's sisters and brothers. The Thunderskin entered the Mansus through the Peacock Door, a privilege never given to the Witch and Sister, but then their merit was much less. The writer admits that entry through the Peacock Door is unseemly, but insists that under the circumstances there was no other way. One thing I'll just highlight here in terms of the powers of the Sisterhood of the Triple Knot. So we have the Altar of the Knot, 3 aspects, moth, moon, and heart. But we may also observe that there's the Callicite altar, the Grail, the Assite altar, the Horned Axe, and remembering that the Red Grail, the Ring Yew, and the Horned Axe, we can make a fairly decent guess in terms of what the last shrine would be. And lucky us, we got another Beguiling Melody, so I'll add that to the pile. I don't think that immediately helps me, but we can use that with Tridesma Hyra, I suppose. In fact, there's a slight complication here just because I don't actually have... I would need a moon, or I would need a grail element of the soul. But we should be able to work that out still. So another dripping. If I want to make some soup, I have plenty. Let's try that again. At this point, I'm not even trying to save it. I just don't have a use for some of this. Okay, you know what? You're staying on the bridge. This one we should probably put somewhere. We used to have it in the kitchen. I guess we'll have to put a second beef on the picnic table. But since we have learnt from all vaporing France to eat their Auguste as well as to dance, we're fed up with nothing but vain complacence. Oh, the roast beef of old England and old English roast beef. All right, the skill is now level 4. Its power aspects have also increased. Applebright Euphonies. Breath is the temptation of the soul. Pleasures and insights that the church would call the secrets, the sisterhood the mysteries, and the bureau unsanctioned. So not quite ready to level up Anbury and Lapidary yet. We still need to get the relevant memories. We've got time over the course of the day, so I'm still going to sit on the Metal Shaft and Whist. What I would do here, I'd say we need 2... Well, no, we did that before. We need 2 Whist and then at least one memory to be able to level up Tradi's Mahaira. Actually, one thing I could do, this will be a use for the glass of water, because we can do that at the very end of the day and we still have 30 seconds. So rest, a quick nap in a warm bed with something comforting to drink while the winds chase the clouds and the clouds chase the sun. And then from that, I should be able to put the pitcher of water back in my inventory. Down to the Grecians. This has boosted their aspects appropriately. So here we'll talk with Mrs. Kill until we've got the memories that we need. So Mrs. Kill has seen more of the world than she usually lets on. Conversations with her yield the occasional surprise. Speaking of occasional surprises, let's also open up those packages. Crack open the container, delight in your discovery. So it could be that we get one a moon or a grail memory from Mrs. Kill here, in which case I'll feel a little bit foolish, but I'm okay. I'm okay taking the chance. 1 minute isn't that big of a deal. I also don't have a grail anyway, so I really would be the... Okay, regret. Every choice has its shadow. So now we only need one more memory for Menescape Reflections. If we get to the point where the bell is ringing... Actually, we should do that earlier. So based off of that, we'll still talk with Mrs. Kill, but I think I'm going to take the 60 seconds to read a relevant book. So I'll read the Leonine Tantra, I think. I've already mastered this, but I could reread it and perhaps recall a memory. So the reason I'm doing that now is I'm going to be kind of cramped in the last minute to try and level up Tradi's Mahaira. I could also use this to level up the Applebright Euphonies, but I think we'll work on Tradi's Mahaira first. As I used to say in my youth, the day is done and so am I, but I've earned my pay. It is spring. The landlady has served me a slice of her stargazy pie with the pilchard heads poking cheekily through the hot crust. Another container. Unexpected finds in the folds of earth and sky. And sand. Alright. Callicite supplications, prayers addressed to the Red Grail by the Sisterhood of the Triple Knot. If we should remember not, let our children remember in their redmost dreams. One prayer describes how sufficient Grail aspect can be used with Tradi's Mahaira rights to give life, a little life to a doll twisted from fabric. So we don't really have enough Tridesma to make this... Well, okay, there might be one or two things that I could do, but we do have a cloth doll that we could use to try and do something fancy with here. And that's a total of 3 lessons, so this gives me satisfaction, which we are full up on, and I'm actually out of space. So how do I fix that? Well, I can probably fix that by moving all of these to a new location. But for now, I'm going to put this on sort of an overflow shelf. All right, let's take a minute just to make sure. So yeah, if I want to try and level up Tridesma, I just need the relevant element of the soul. And I suppose the last couple of steps here would be, I've got Fet Metal, Shapt, and Whist. I only need the Shapt or the Metal to be able to level up Meniscate Reflections. I only need... well, yeah, so the Fet, I can get one more trip to the moor out of that. But for the rest of it, I've got 3 elements of the soul that are really not accounted for in terms of what I want to do with them. So let's take the Whist and something like Desires and Dissolutions. I will need the spice scales for that. But for that, we'll just make a replacement Witching to Sane. That seems like a good use of the day. Hush House still rings with Thwarted Desires. I'll mix that into a Tisane. And then for the Fet and the Whist, it's really just a question in terms of how I can make... So I can't make another memory because I already have... I'm already going to be keeping the Wild Surmise, so reading a book doesn't quite do anything there. I could... I mean, I guess if I don't renew... Well, I'm already renewing the element of the soul, so in terms of making money, I think I've already spoken for my elements of the soul there. So it really is just a question of being able to make certain things, and I think probably... trying to get a... oh, hang on. Why do I have both the Shapt and the Metal set aside here? So I think I'll try and make another Amethyst Ampule. Can't remember if it's the Edict's Liminal that lets me do that or not. It does not. Yeah, so I can add any old element of the soul here. Provided it can actually... Oh, here we go. This will be easy. Create an unusual and dangerous medicine, a paradoxical knock ampule. So if I want something a little more explicitly knock, we can go... No, I shouldn't be surprising that Door and Wall gives explicitly secret threshold. Okay, so Amethyst Ampule, shape, tint, and fill a paradoxical knock ampule. And then for the Whist, I think we can get away with making another Solomon's Preparation. We can use Ava's Locks for that. Pale rack washed up on the beach by Brandkrug. Muddle and mix a wintry preparation. So we really have more Solomon's Preparation than we know what to do with, but I'm not too upset by being able to make more of it, just because it gives us a leg up in terms of making the Nillikant when the time comes. I'm also kind of conscious of the time that I have left in the session, so or the day rather, so. Okay, Memory Foresight, this lets me level up Menescape Reflections as soon as the day is done. Now, realistically, I'm not going to be able to do anything else with Tradiz Mahaira, so there's nothing else for me to do with Mrs. Kill, which means we should open up the next room with her. So, the Wing-Haunted Cave. A drunken whirl of bats drives me back, perhaps literally drunken. There's a faint but definite brandy smell. Oh, if I want, now is the time for me... Oh no, hang on. I need them out. I've used up my Elements of the Soul, so I can't talk with Tuppence and Terrence. Scrumpy! Crack open the container, delight in your discovery. Scrumpy, the West Country's most unregenerate achievement, perhaps at its best when pressed from stolen apples. 2 Grail, 2 Nectar. I'm very happy to have this, but I'm not crazy about the size. So, onto the bridge with you. Menescape Reflections. Finally, we get to level this thing up to the one that I want. What am I doing? Not a wild surmise. At last, I am something of an authority in this. Improve the skill to level 6. Alright. And before I get too carried away, I'm going to take a minute and just change my notes as far as the skills are concerned. So, we have... Okay, so I don't need the 3-edge and forge for Menescape Reflections now. Tradiz Mahaira, technically I haven't applied any of that yet, so I should still keep it at 6 Grail and Moon. Alplebright Euphanies now only needs 2 Grail and Sky. Rhyme and Remembrance, Drums and Dances. Yeah, lots of different things for me to follow. But I can say Menescape Reflections is ready to go. And either Wolf Stories if I want to keep going down the Birdsong path. Stone Stories if I want to keep going down the Preservation path. If I want the smallest cost, 2 to Applebright Euphanies, and if I want the smallest cost that I could theoretically actually apply to the Tree of Wisdoms, that would be 3 Moon and Winter for Rhyme and Remembrance. I think I'm going to focus on Tradiz Mahaira, though. It seems like a fairly straightforward one for me to level up, and it's actually probably makes for the most on the shelf here. So we've got 3. We'll get another 2 when we read The Wonderful Shape. And then probably something like the Crossing to Noon will get me through the rest. I deserved a little quiet time, so we'll use that to level up. Oh, right. Bonus. The Leonine Tantra, the most notorious translation of the Leonine Tantra. Sorry, in the most notorious translation of the Leonine Tantra, Ashley Phillips is listed as the translator, but their existence is explicitly denied in the prologue. This confusion is characteristic of books which mention the Great Hooded Princes. So the question would be, why does it mention the Great Hooded Princes? I thought we were talking about lions. The Tantra describes elliptically the great hooded princes and the multitudinous ways in which they influenced wars against foreign invaders in the land of the Great River, although, in a sense, they were also invaders. Lions can be created, not as children are created, nor as words are created, but as weapons are created. The great hooded princes learnt to create lions from their spyings on the affairs of the hours, and not all lions now serve the Golden General. Does this explain exactly what's going on with the Great Hooded Princes? Probably not, but definitely we get some more ideas in terms of their capabilities and all the funny business they're up to. Also, we were just talking about the Lionsmith earlier, so. All right. But obviously this was assuming that we didn't have the memories we needed, which clearly we do. Okay, Metascate Reflections. Without is purified, within is erased. So we'll take the time to level up Trades Mahaira. Guiding Melodies, Satisfaction. Add the Arab. I'm no expert, but I'm no dabbler either. And then first thing tomorrow, we'll get another Grail. We'll get another Grail memory and get reading. All right, there's not much work on offer in Brandkrug, but I can find 6 worth of odd jobs. So just to recap in terms of what I'm going to... No! Recap of what I'm going to need. So we have 6 for Leaves and Thorns. We can add 2 to that with the Arab, so that would be 8. And then 2 from a memory, which brings us to 10. And that will be what allows us to read the Wonderful Shape for its 2 memories. All right. The Smuggler's Den. In the last years of the 18th century, the De Wolf line ended and the estate lay empty. Enterprising smugglers spread rumors of the ghosts that walk the Isle and quietly brought their tea, brandy, and tobacco in through the old mines on the seaward side of the Isle. But the remnants here are much newer than the 18th century. Perhaps even the Curia took Perhaps even after the Curia took possession, they permitted the smugglers to use this place. Ambrose Westcott did love his baccy so. Perhaps even the Suppression Bureau found the smugglers useful enough to turn a blind eye. So we have a few different items here. We have got a hurricane lamp, proof against the storm wind and moth swoop alike. Dandelion wine, 2 bottles of Schloss Jannings, 2 of Domaine Reveline, and 1 bottle of Lambic Broslende. We've got Forsaken packages and a crate of supplies, and then a bottled candle. An admirable combination of 2 utterly disparate elements. Quite genius. Medical. Medically. Must be Latin. All right. We've got the Gaping Darkness, so if I want, I can go and get that 5 moth again to give me a head start, or we can try and do something with the heart. Alternatively, I can try the heart and nectar, remembering, of course, that we will have nectar with the Orchard Keeper when the time comes. Moon and Rose, so we will get access to both of those over the course of either fall or summer. Now, these 2 don't have anything that... So, in terms of seasonal visitors, we don't have anything that would give me an edge with those. We do, of course, have Reverend Timothy. We have Denzel to help with the knock and the edge. Technically, Denzel is a little bit better in terms of edge, but we only have elements of the soul that'll grant 1 edge. So effectively, Reverend Timothy and Denzel are equivalent when it comes to these. And then for the impermeable cell, we do have... So Denzel would give me the forge, and Reverend Timothy would give me the knock. Alternatively, if I didn't want to spend money on a hireling, Mr. Kill would give me the sky. So he has 1 sky there. But of course, so would a fisherman. And because I did specify that I wasn't going to worry about those sealed vaults, I can't count those. Alright, it has its uses, but none of them are simple and few are safe. Amethyst Ampule, were it released from the glass, it would be quite another color. These are really being kept more in reserve, but I do find them helpful in certain cases. And do I have a new home for the Witching Tisane? I'm trying to keep it off of the Trying to keep it out of Velopolis Nook, but I'm running out of places to put it. Don't think... Well, there we go. Give whoever's having a snooze here a bit of a surprise. So the other thing I'll do tomorrow in game is open a few more packages, I think. The skill is now level 3. Its power aspects have also increased. So I think in this case, let's move... I'm going to move Tridesma Hyra to where it needs to be. Ooh, I'm happy to have the mushrooms. And with Keeper level Winter, Solomon's Preparation is a precursor to the Great Ink Nillikant. So, so one thing I'll just to highlight something I was talking with Selphea about earlier on in the stream. Sometimes it doesn't even need to be a very sort of indirect, sort of like what we were doing with Fekri. Sometimes the game will just straight up tell you, like, hey, this thing you built, you can level it up even higher. But obviously that still is sort of premised on the idea of reading all of the different items. And it's easier said than done. It is easy to just sort of go on autopilot. Okay, so housekeeping-wise, I definitely want to open this package and find a home for the dripping. We'll worry about that later. And I think, if you folks don't mind, I am probably going to take a minute to have a small break. The only thing is I am actually feeling a bit tired after today, and so this is one of these cases where I'd sort of be like, you know, it'd be kind of nice to just put my head down and go to sleep. So what I'm going to do here is I'll refill my tea. I'll try and just generally wake up a little bit more. And if I'm not feeling better by the end of it, I won't just end the broadcast after the break. But if I'm not feeling 100%, you know, I'll get a little bit more time in the game and then sort of find a natural place to wrap it up. So I'm not ending now, but I think I may want a minute just to see if I can perk up a little bit. But I did say I was going to rearrange everything in the list. So Tridesma Hyra will eventually become level 8, currently level 3. Anywhere but where you currently are, please. I actually think I'm still quite far behind. Okay, well it says 6 here. Clearly that's 5 now. All right, and one last thing for me to do, the Wild Surmise. We need to rest on that. Okay, dream on a memory. Now that night has fallen, I can rest and perhaps dream on the day's doings. So, if you folks don't mind, I'm going to take a minute to refill the tea, to have a bit of a stretch. I don't know, bounce around like a jumping bean. I do actually have a bit of a burrito that I need to finish. I didn't finish dinner before I got started, so I'll try not to make the break too long, but I am just going to get myself sorted out. So I encourage you all, if you have been here since the start or otherwise, If you've been sitting down for a long time, to get up, have a stretch. Perhaps you can get a glass of water or otherwise take care of yourself. And I'll try to be back in a few minutes to give you some more Book of Hours. But until then, see you in a bit. Okay, sorry about the wait there. Just to give you an idea of the kind of moron you're dealing with at this hour, I put my glasses down. I've not been wearing contacts lately, and I just couldn't find them because it's dark in the apartment. But we're good to go. What I think I'm going to do just before we move on to the next day in the game, I actually think it might be an idea to share the latest Weather Factory blog with all of you. Excuse me. So let me just take a quick second to bring that up, and because it does have a little bit of information in terms of the next game. And the reason why I wanted to talk about that was I very briefly covered it unintentionally. Well, I knew what I was talking about, but I didn't realize that there was going to be an announcement between the last stream and this one, so I feel it's worth mentioning. So in the previous stream, we had talked about how there had been some question in terms of whether or not there was going to be another expansion for House of Light, or if there was going to be a new game. My impression was that they were going to be making a new game, but again, the community seemed to feel that there was some non-zero chance that there was an additional DLC, and, you know, until Weather Factory announces something, your guess is as good as mine in terms of what's true. So we actually have some clarity in terms of what their plans are. And actually, they talked a little bit more about their plans as game developers overall. So I thought this was a pretty interesting post, which is why I want to take the time to read it here. So, light is always the answer. Posted by Lottie Bevan. Chitinous cities embrace the change or struggle against plagues of leaf and amber. We've been a bit quiet recently, but we haven't been idle. Today is the long-awaited launch day. A long-awaited launch day, but it's also a good time to update everyone on what we've been up to. First up, the Lucid Tarot is out now. Get it here. So if you were looking forward to this, you are going to have to wait a bit longer because this thing sold out really fast. The first 500 decks of the Lucid Tarot are now available on the Etsy shop. They're unique collector's decks because they come with a signed certificate of authenticity along with their embroidered velvet tarot bag and a quick start guide to reading the cards. If you'd like one, get it quick. We expect them to go pretty fast. To remind you, these cards are a reimagining of Secret History's lore. You'll see ours represented in new ways to highlight parts of them we didn't foreground in the Tarot of the Hours, for example, and inspired by the otherworldly beauty of stained glass windows. The major arcana features all hours from the Moth to the enigmatic 21st hour, sometimes called the Giribrago, but with the traditional Raider White names, the Fool, the World, rather than their Secret History's counterparts. I've also tried to reflect the Raider White symbology more clearly in the minor arcana, but with familiar skills and companions from Book of Hours. You'll find Aaron Peel, the Knight of Pentacles, for instance, or Wolf Stories, the Seven of Swords. I hope this adds new meaning on top of the gorgeously rich Raider White deck, as well as giving you a good game of, hey, I recognize that thing from somewhere else. Anyway, I'm very happy where it's all ended up, especially considering how derpy some of the original drawings are. Forgive me, Elegist. If anyone misses out on a deck, don't worry, we'll be relisting another batch of approximately 400 plus tarots this year as soon as we can facilitate it. Christmas is coming after all, and I just need time to manage the backlog of orders. I don't think I could ship 1,000 decks without turning into a poor lunatic. Thank you very much, extremely much for being patient with me while this project went on and on. If I make another deck for Game 3, maybe I won't try to engineer an entirely new way to make cards before I can distribute them. Just a thought, Lottie. Just a thought. A voice from the other side. AK here. It still tickles me how few people realize Weather Factory is literally just two people, plus, of course, trusted freelancers. I answer support emails every week addressed to Dear Support Team. We get speculative applications from people who want to intern with us and don't realize we work out of a flat. Microstudios composed of couples are more common than they used to be, but it's still mildly unusual. We like it, but it does make it harder to take holidays, and it does mean we don't hire. I mentioned recently that we've been working on Book of Hours on and off for 5 years now. Some of that was pre-production, some of that was the House of Light expansion, but it's a long old time. An undergraduate degree and a master's degree, a newborn infant grown enough to go to school. If you planted an apple pip 5 years ago, you could be eating its fruit today. Or to put it another way, I was 47 when I began making Book of Hours, and I'm 52 now. And it occurred to me that I've made about 4 games over 15 years, and in another 15 years, I'll be 67. So Lottie and I had a chat about whether and how we want to spend the next 15 years doing this, both making games and making games as a micro studio with just the two of us. If you like our games, you'll be glad to hear that the answer is, broadly speaking, yes. Maybe we'll do more physical goods. Maybe I'll take a couple of years out for that MA I keep threatening. But we like working together, and we like the artisanal nature of the whole thing. I don't actually get up on Monday and think, yay, support emails. Lottie doesn't get excited about answering Etsy merch queries. But we do like handling this stuff personally. The people who own the company and make the games are the same people you're talking to. It also stops us from getting too up ourselves. We've talked about Weather Factory being a bit like a band or an artistic partnership, but most days it feels more like a family-run cafe that happens to sell coffee through Steam. And we like making things for you lot. For our audience, I mean. I said as long ago as Fall in London that there is something to be said for making games that work like reading comprehension tests. It brings a calmer class of customer. We've got ideas then for at least a couple of games before we turn in our Dev Guild hat feathers and go off to roast coffee in the hills. Over to Lottie about the next one. What now? We're still working on Book of Hours localization. In case you missed it, House of Light is now fully playable in simplified Chinese, and various important but not too terribly scintillating tech and bug support issues. But, as AK says above, we took some time to take stock of where the studio is and what we want to do next. We've decided that, while we might come back to Book of Hours later, we've said what we wanted to say through House of Light. We'd like to leave it there, for now. Currently, we're fascinated by an idea for Game 3. We've spent some of the past couple of months prototyping the underlying tech system and art direction so that we can share something that's reasonably likely to look like the final game. We need to do a bit more work before we can announce, but here are some tidbits we can share. The game is set in the Secret Histories, but another decade on. The world has changed and keeps on changing. It may appeal to AK's older audiences. LOL, this game is for old people. No. It may appeal to AK's older audiences from Fallen London and Sunless Sea, as well as Weather Factory fans. It's a new genre we haven't developed before. It's a natural fit for the kind of stuff we do, though. It's ambitious, and who's this? Well, who is it? Anyways, that's all we got on the new game. So I will confess, I was actually expecting radio silence on the new game for a much longer time. The idea that it's already been prototyped and that they have something that they feel close enough to that's sort of representative of what they'll be doing. It's interesting. It's also kind of funny too, because I don't want to get people sort of worked up about something that isn't on the list of things that will be made. But I remember once upon a time there was sort of talk of really liking sort of film noir and maybe doing a sort of noir detective story. I don't know what happened to that project, and I also know that there was some talk of a game that if you like subset games, and I happen to know that Alexis does like subset games, so I think FTL was a big influence on Sunless Sea. I actually think he preferred FTL to Into the Breach, which is actually kind of funny because almost every other developer I know is obsessed with Into the Breach. They just consider that like the pinnacle of design. So there was some talk of that, and that, by the way, does not eliminate that as a possibility. And then there was a sort of a story outline for a game called The Iron Road, which was published. In fact, that's still in the Weather Factory catalog. And there are some hints of kind of things that probably wound up becoming the Hours in Secret Histories. But again, that was another one which wasn't necessarily closed off in terms of a future. And I do remember at some point they had said that they had a game which wasn't in the Secret Histories that they were possibly working on. But then Game 3 was sort of said to be a Secret Histories game. So there's one, maybe two projects that I know have been talked about in the past, um, that aren't currently on the roadmap. But again, so much of that post is about, you know, not only, what is the next game, but actually asking whether or not you want to stay a game developer. It is really interesting. There's a book, I actually haven't read all of it yet. I've really only read the first couple of chapters, but it's called A Writer's Time. And it takes this idea of sort of working out your... It tries to say that it's something that the Greeks did. I don't know if this is actually true or not, because it's the first I encountered that, but there's a lot of things that I don't know, so that's not surprising. But it basically sort of says, it talks about sort of planning out your life in sort of 7-year chunks. And that's a really odd thing to do, right? Like it's one of these things where I don't even really think a year out. And yet it's, I'm actually not that far. It's a few months, but I'm not that far away from a year at the new job. It still sort of feels like I'm new. So time does kind of catch up to you, and if you don't use that time intentionally, you can sometimes sort of wake up and wonder, am I actually spending this time the way that I want? And of course, in the case of A Writer's Time, it's really more about just sort of saying, I think we talked about this a couple of episodes ago, but finding time to read, finding time to write, and I think the sort of the take that A Writer's Time is largely taking is, we're all endowed with the same 24 hours every day, but some people do seem to be a little bit better at using it. And I think that's sort of how that book is structured. But it is kind of interesting because, the sad thought is, right, if you have a creator who does things that you like, right? So like David Lynch, for instance, is, not well. And so I don't know if they've completely ruled out directing any further films, but definitely he is less physically able to make more movies. And we know everybody's mortal, so at some point there will be a period in which creators that we like stop making things that we like. And sometimes that happens very suddenly, and sometimes, there is a big lead up to it. But it's never a pleasant thought to have. But, in the end, these things eventually end. They all do. And, it is worth, especially in the case of the micro studio, right? The people that you're sending the support messages to, the people who you're interacting with, are the people who made the game, and they have options. These are two very talented people who I think probably could do quite well for themselves if they went out, into the wider world and worked for a place. So I'm, of course, as a player, very happy. And also, as somebody who is, I'm not indifferent to the people who make games. I'm happy that their answer is that this is something that's worth taking the time for. But of course, the thing is that the answer to that was not guaranteed to be yes. The answer might have been, this is more trouble than it's worth. Let's find something else to do with our time. So obviously I was happy to hear that, but it is kind of interesting because you very rarely hear people talk. Like usually what you'll do is you'll just hear somebody saying, we're throwing in the towel, we've run out of money or whatever. But in this case, it's actually just kind of neat to get the perspective of a developer that's saying is like, we're doing game 3 because we like this idea of operating as a couple that makes games. Anyways, I have ranted at you long enough. Let's move on to the next day. We will be taking the time to level up Tridesma Hira. We'll also use it to read another book to get more Tridesma Hira. And then we can decide what our next step's going to be. So we'll have 3 to work with. So that'll be 3, then 7, then 5. So we'll need 12 elements of the soul in total. We also really don't need to worry too much about the health, and we don't need to do that much cooking. Although I may want to work out whether I want to try anything with moth. Okay, before I go too much... I don't want to go too deep into the day, but let's actually work out what we need moth-wise. So if we had the barber, which is the most optimistic case, So the barber would start with 2 moths, so then we use the tryst for another 2. That brings us up to 4. Then we'd use the shears. That would bring us up to 5. So from there, of course, we would use the memory. So that brings us up to 10. We needed 12, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So, yeah, this does actually seem to be something that's better to wait for summer, seeing as it's so close. I don't think I'm going to worry too much about the heart. So if we did the same with Reverend Timothy, so we'd start with 1 knock. So Shapt, we would add 2, which brings us up to 3. Oh, that's interesting. So if we do... Yes. Okay. There's probably a book I want to read before I try and do anything with Reverend Timothy, because we don't have a particularly effective knock memory. The best I could do would be to add a name day riddle. Actually, probably a curious hunch, which would give us 4. So then we don't have a tool, which is another problem there. Holy hell, yeah, so then I would need a drink. So Sacrament Asite would give me 6 knock to work with, which would take me up to 11, but then I would need another 2 knock, so I would need food with 2 knock. So yeah, Reverend Timothy's not an option yet. So if we took Denzel... Now the good news there is that Denzel starts off with 2 edge, so then we use either Arab or metal for the extra 1, so that takes us up to 3. So here we could use a tool, so that brings us up to 4. So the real question on this one would be what kind of memory I can bring to bear, because in one sense, so the Wormwood Dream doesn't really give me that much, it's just 3. And in theory, we should be able to do something like a winning move and an invincible audacity. But I actually think we come up a bit short when it comes to these. So maybe just for the interests of a realistic assessment. Yeah, so with our memory, we can get up to 7. Now, I guess the one bit of good news is I do have a somewhat reliable way of making serpent milk. So with that, we do get up to 13 edge. But then that really does bring the question, like, am I willing to put that much into opening up the trapped cell? I kind of think I am. I guess the question now is, do I want to do that today? And I think the answer for that one is, what is it going to take? Like, so if I want to try and do this, do I actually have what it takes? So preferably, can I do something other than make the Wormwood Dream? So before I go any further, let's just see what my options are with Disciplines of the Scar and related. Okay, so I can make a Perinculate with the presence of a leaf. That's helpful for me because I can, with the Perinculate, I know I can make the serpent milk. So what I'll do here... Disciplines of the Scar, metal, and any old leaf will do. Cat's Claw sort of help. Well, yeah, we've got lots of Cat's Claw, actually. So I also don't need to use a metal in that case. Yeah, it'll do the trick. Brew a notoriously deadly ink of power. And I actually think Disciplines of the Scar is my better option for making serpent milk. I'll maybe try something at the foundry just to be sure. So if I add the metal here... Yeah, so I need another 2 edge, which I don't have immediately available to me. So we'll wait for later on in the day. But it is clear that I'm going to want to hire Denzel, so let's get that out of the way right now. I'll use the health in this case. Denzel will talk about practical matters, though he prefers to sit in silence. A shilling will buy his help for a day. If you give him occult coinage, he will perform the service of division instead. What do you need? Let's use the whist to earn some money at the Sweet Bones. Help with letters. I could offer help with correspondence and arithmetic. There is no school in Brandkrug, and not everyone here knows their letters. Or add a coin to find visitors seeking employment. Okay, I still want to get some Grail to work with, so I'm going to get a Satisfaction first. We'll read the Berry Book. Always a favorite. I've already mastered this, but I could reread it and perhaps recall a memory. So what I'm going to be trying to do here, I have, so I need 10 Grail to read the Wonderful Shape. We'll use Arab for that for sure. But the aim for today basically is to level up Tradisma Hyra with as many points as I can, effectively. And I also have sort of a secondary goal now of getting Denzel to open up this room, but that's not quite... Oh, sorry, not this room. The trapped cell. That's not as high of a priority, but it's still a bit of a priority. But basically every element of the soul here I can sort of use to... sort of direct towards those ends. So we'll keep going with the gathering. I also have the option of going to the Gull Colony. I'm actually not opposed to doing that, but I think I want a little more clarity in terms of how I'm going to use my Elements of the Soul for today. The one thing that I do want to do, though, for Tradisma Hyra, so we have Grail and Moon. I believe the loss is Winter and Edge, so that doesn't help me too much. But what I do want to do is basically get any Moon and Winter... Oh, sorry, there was one other thing I wanted to do. I wanted to see if I could make a winning move. Theoretically, yes. Let's use the whist for the start with Torg's Cleansing. Purge myself of harmonious resonances, accruing some personal edge. It won't be pleasant. Okay, and then the last thing I'm going to do is get all of the Moon and Grail material that I can that I know I'm not going to get from Denzel. So we can read the Gemini at Volume 3. Glimmering doesn't help us in this case. Impulses we can get from Denzel. Hindsight and intuitions don't help. Patterns don't help. Storms don't help. Intuitions don't help. Fear doesn't help. Regrets don't help. But we can use contradictions. This is foresight. Yeah. Gossip. Salt does give us Moon. Founding Parables has moon as well. Solace isn't going to do anything for us. Cheerful Disease note, Revelations note. We're already reading Satisfaction. Okay. I think that's it for books I can read right now. Yeah. Although the nice thing is I can sort of level up Tridesma Hira as I go. We don't have that many elements to worry about right now. And it's a cloudy day. Actually, that helps me because it has moon. Denzel the blacksmith will lend me his strength for the day. So we have a pretty clear idea in terms of how we're using everything. The metal is less useful to me than the... it's less useful to me than the Arab, because the Arab I can use to level up Tridesma Hira, so we're going to use this to boost his edge. Inspiration and Determination boosts Forge and Edge. And we'll kind of continue along similar lines, although I know the memory is going to take a while for me to generate, so... If we need to do it at the very end of the day, so be it. I want to see how far I can take this without breaking the bank. Also, if I can get by without using the serpent milk, so much the better. But we are prepared to use that if we have to. All right, our course is fixed. So let's give him the saw. I can lend my assistant something to help increasing their abilities. Excuse me. This is what I get for eating the burrito too fast. So it's a fairly idle day today, but this is just because I have a few things that I'm sort of queuing up still. Alright, I'm going to save the Berry book for last, because that's a really fun one to read. The Geminiad Volume 3, a fragile manuscript illuminated with twin shapes of sad and luminous beauty, and with all the phases of the moon. It might be as old as the 7th century, but the language Fusine is much older. Coral decorates its cover, and its page edges are sharp enough to slash a throat. The pages outline the nature and the doctrines of an hour that demands the union of what has been separated, an hour that is sought at the water's edge and beneath the moon, the witch and sister. The language is elusive, enigmatic, intricate. It'll take some untangling. The third volume of the Geminiad reminds us that the witch and sister has been known to manifest as the sister and witch, and that this face may heal while the other face is always hungry. It implies connections between the witch and sister and the hours of the wood, especially the secret keeper called the Velvet, but it is ambiguous on whether the witch and sister is a wood hour proper, and it speaks at length about the sadness of the two who are one, the sadness that remains from their time as flesh. So, Beguiling Melody, a sweet enchantment of a song. We can use that to level... Oh, sorry, we are at 3 with Tridesma Hira, so I need one more. The Sea Does Not Regret. Eason Fekri, one-time Secretary Salvant to the Curia of the Isle, responsible for the Curia's healing efforts, writes of his experiences in Brankrug and hints at his travels elsewhere. So, as we were talking about before, we have a little bit of an idea in terms of who Eason Fekri is, and this is the one that talks about the fish suppers. So, I think it is anyway. The sea does not regret the tide, Fekri writes, for when the tide has passed, it leaves its traces on the sand, which traces are the sea's memory. Fekri is a keen fisherman and speaks glowingly of the fish suppers of Brankrug. He also admits that his enthusiasm for the bounty of the sea has altered him, that before he came to Brankrug he consumed only things found in the earth. I was the greater thereby, but all of us give up what we were to become what we are. And of course, what was he? Well, we read Fekri's Herbery to learn a little bit about that. Okay. The Locksmith's Dream, Portions and Proportions, the second volume of Teresa Galmier's examination of parallels in the mystic dreams of artisans. The frontispiece has been slashed with a razor. In this volume, Galmier records fewer dreams and explicates more on her own elaborate theories. We see again and again what is below can't escape what is above. The finest artisans all dream of the white door in the end. I'm no artisan, only a scholar. I think there is a secret that all these artisans know, but I think that secret is only half the story. The confounding parable, the moth, the grail, and the egg unhatching all tell different stories about the world's beginning. One of those stories is the oldest, but it may not be the first. The Ascendant, the edgelong Dardish, boasts of her victories over her brother enemy Tareg in the days of the Shadowless Empire. Sweeter than wine, the nectar is the blood of my brother. We have raised up armies one against another. We have sated the Blackbone with the sinking of our ships. Dardish's boasting at length turns melancholy. An edgelong is half a dyad. She may not defeat her hated brother-enemy without ending herself. She doesn't even want to, but she is aware, to her frustration, that she is a piece on the board, an axle on the ox cart, an essential part of the eternal engine of contention which the lionsmith and colonel use to sustain the world. Alright, the cleansing has left my skin burning, my teeth throbbing, the chorality rumbles beneath the membranous surfaces of the waking world. Toward cleansing, the librarian Natalia Brulot learned this powerful, if unpleasant, technique from the priest and edgelong Reverend Torg. So, pure to edge, but we're doing this so that we can gain a higher level edge memory. So we add the metal, we add Torg's cleansing. I can also add more if I really need. I don't think Edict's Liminal gives me anything better. So we are one short. I think it's a little reckless to do this, but I'm just going to throw another metal in play. Or, hang on, I think we can do better than that. I think we may be able to use the foundry. Actually, there's a couple of things that I can do here. So do Meniscate Reflections, we add the metal. And we should have a Libidic Tincture that we can toss in somewhere. I'm going to be slightly disappointed with myself if I didn't. Okay, so that's worth 2. Alright, but that is a material. So I can use it with the glassware, but I can't put Torg's cleansing in that place. But it would seem to me one of my other options would be to take the Vagabond Desk. So here we can still add Meniscate Reflections, we can still add Torg's cleansing. The difference though is here we can add an edge item, which in this case would be the Cucurbit Barrette, a vessel with an ambiguous history. Establish a synthesis of alternatives. Meniscate Reflections with scholar level edge plus memory creates a winning move. Okay, help with letters, an afternoon spent profitably reading newspapers to the curious, writing affectionate letters for the lonely, steering farmers to the requirements of the Ministry of Agriculture. It is spring, and the landlady has served me a slice of her stargazy pie, with the pilchard heads poking cheekily through the hot crust. And finally, the Berry Book. Thyrza Blake, 7th librarian of Hush House, talks about fruit, for no other apparent reason, but that it was the kind of thing that she did. She talks about fruit in the woven language Kilisimi. Who was it once said, "Fruit is the womb of a plant"? It was me. Take a few moments to think on that enripened wisdom. I shall leave a blank space for your moments here in this page. Nectar, children mine, cast my words into a sufficiency of nectar and watch the Pyrus Persimmon burst from wood. Gather more nectar, wring it from the trees and the earth, and our Persimmon gushes forth the sacrament. You will thank me. Yeah, it's a... It's a particularly good... It strikes me as the sort of thing that if I had just a little more confidence, I would write. I also do like the game does give you opportunities for good pauses. My favorite by far, I'll do a regular reading and then the intended reading. So I think Transformations and Liberations will do this. So chandlery, a skill that can be used with suitable ingredients to make candles. The most likely ingredients are beeswax and herbs, but to confound villagers and visitors, leave a meaningful pause before the word suitable. So the correct reading is a skill that can be used with suitable ingredients to make candles. Where were we? Right, leveling up Trides Mahira. Another fruit plucked from Knowledge's tree. Improve the skill to level 4. So we can bring back the Beguiling Melody and the Salt right away, and I am inclined to do so. And then, oh, I used up a couple of my Grail slots, but if we take Nona's desk, we can add the Arab here, and then we can go Satisfaction, Leaves and Thorns, and we'll need a little bit more, but it was rather important that if I was going to read the Berry book that I get my Kilisimi back, because we need it for the wonderful shape. Kilisimi, if there is speech in nowhere, if there is a language used by the dead, if the House of the Moon has a native tongue, then it must be Kilisimi. If none of this is true, it is not a language to be spoken in daylight. Each word breathes woe. Read it, as they say, and weep. So I think at some point I'm probably going to start restoring Arab at the Sweet Bones. Also probably pour some water and get one of them back after resting. The reason I'm so focused on getting Arab back, well, I guess I can use the core as well, but one of the reasons why I want to focus on getting Arab back is just because I am going to be doing a lot with Trides Mahira today. Okay, now we don't have the memory to move the needle on Denzel here, but let me just double check what I was going to do with him today. So, starts with 2, Element of the Soul, Tool, and Memory and Milk. So really we're kind of at decision time here. So I will give him the milk just because I don't think it's worth trying to wait for the Invincible Audacity. We can use him for memories instead. I can offer my assistants something to drink. This will increase their aspects. They'll also be glad of the refreshment. Serpent milk. It does look almost like milk, and it is drinkable, but don't give it to cats or babies. Okay, pour it out. So I'll put one on the ledge here. Pour it out. All right. And you can go there. So we need 2 more before we can level up Trides Mahira again. Viper Egg, a serpent in waiting. So this is actually kind of helpful to feed to a Stimfling if I want a powerful memory. And I do actually kind of want that memory. Hey, more Pilcards. This is actually one of the few cases where I have more fish than I know what to do with. Alright, to the bridge with you. And with keeper level edge, Perinculate is a precursor to serpent milk. So I'll put you... I actually probably should be making more of this in general. Perinculate is very helpful to have. But for now, let's just focus on getting things made. So we add the Perinculate in the fuel. We add, I guess, Disciplines of the Scar. And I am short 1 edge. Okay, so this is a case where we can make use of the Alchemist's glassware. So Perinculate, Disciplines of the Scar. Ideally we avoid using the memories, so instead we use the Libidic Tincture. Actually, Arsenic also does the trick. Enrich the ink to a fluid vibrant with edge power. And I think I'm actually going to try and make another Perinculate. This time I'm going to use the... or I can't because I am using up my... well, let's see. I need 10, but if I use Cat's Claw... yeah. Brew a notoriously deadly ink of power. Okay, now, the question is, did I... yes. I am reading the relevant memories. And if I want, I can actually use the old wound to... no, I need 4. Yeah, let's just leave it to do its thing. I will, however, use the Tryst and the Fet. I don't want to completely abandon all the other priorities for the day. And I think we've got a good enough little system going that I should be able to restore the elements that I need. Now, I drew up that water for a reason. That's so I can restore the Arab. A quick nap in a warm bed with something comforting to drink while the winds chase the clouds and the clouds chase the sun. And I will drop some water. And then finally the glass can go in my inventory. I also have a spare pitcher already here, but it's a nice easy way for me to get elements of the soul back. So I'm going to keep along those lines. So again, we're still going to wait on the memory, but we're more or less assured to have the memory that we need. The question really is, do I use the Wormwood Dream or do I use the winning move? So speak to Denzel. He might even reply. I am obviously on Team Timothy rather than Team Denzel when it comes to conversation. Alright, The Queen's Turn, a 16th century translation of the Barrowchild's account of Lagia's turn, when Lagia, the queen unsated, was offered the opportunity to enter the service of the Hours of the Triple Knot as long as she repudiated her brother-lover Antaios. Lagia accepts, setting aside the arts the low red sun associated with Antaios. She bargains, however, for freedom for her daughters. The Hours of the Triple Knot accept casually, knowing that Lagia has devoured her daughters, but wily Lagia has decided in the secret hollow of her heart that she will adopt any who ask if they can prove their fierceness. The traditions described here, the ones generally described as hill and hollow, are associated with Lagia before her turn, but now she's a name of the Red Grail, they might also safely be used before an altar of the Triple Knot. We may have seen such an altar earlier today. Alright, better now. I don't have any of the Grail-oriented ones, so we'll just keep doing help with letters. I could offer help with correspondence and arithmetic. There is no school in Brandkrug, and not everyone here knows their letters. And the Morphe Codex, a priestess of the Sisterhood of the Knot, claims to have discerned the true meaning of the Thunderskin's birth. The writer credits the Red Grail, the Ring Yew, and the Horned Axe, the powers the Sisterhood reveres, with agreeing a final treaty between the Hours of the House and the Hours they displaced. The Thunderskin loved the Yew, and the Grail destroyed him as restitution for the slaying of the Horned Axe's sisters and brothers. The Thunderskin entered the Mansis through the Peacock Door, a privilege never given to the Witch and Sister, but then their merit was much less. The writer admits that entry through the Peacock Door is unseemly, but insists that under the circumstances there was no other way. All right. More Treaties Mahaira. This is actually the last of the lessons, but of course we'll be getting more when the... we'll be getting more once the book that we're reading is finished. Excuse me, I am so sorry. I don't like talking and yawning, but it's been a long day, and it's 2 in the morning. Okay, so satisfying to have come so far. Improve the skill to level 5. So I do have a little bit of a decision. We're reading The Wonderful Shape. So we've got a minute before this is finished. And the thing is, I don't actually remember what memory this gives me, so I think I'm just going to sit and wait so I don't duplicate the memories that I have. But it does feel a little weird to just sit around. He does a lot with silence, this man. So the hindsight might be able to be, I might be able to turn that into an Illicant or something. But I'm not going to focus on... So all of these are sort of nice to haves. The focus of today really is to make sure that I get the lessons and the memories that I need. Alright, craft a winning move with Keeper level Edge. A winning move is a precursor to Invincible Audacity. For those who have studied the Hours of the Edge often say the world is a war, the core of Ality. Every event that might happen differently is a battle in that war, a contention between alternate outcomes. The wisdoms can sometimes show those battles might be won. So that's 3 edge that I can give Denzel. Now, one of the things I was sort of hoping to do would be, we'll take something like the Foundry, so we would do, I guess we have to use Meniscatus Reflections in this case, but... And then I'd somehow need to find another 5, so I think if I use Steel, that's Silver. Oof, okay, so I guess Perinculate in this case. I'm not actually going to do it, but... Oh, okay, well now I've got Serpent Milk. Good to know. Yeah, what I was looking for was the Invincible Audacity, which is the level above winning move. That gives 6 edge. But we don't need to worry about that again. If we give Denzel the winning move, we're good to go. Alright, the skill is now level 5. Its power aspects have also increased, remembering that we need to get Treaties Mahaira to 8 in the end. So what I'll do here is I will spend some money to bring the Arab back, and then we'll decide what our next move is. All right, excellent. So we've got a fear to work with. I meant to talk to him about the winning move. Okay. Oh, hang on. The edge doesn't help me. Okay. Unexpected finds in the folds of earth and sky. Serpentinite slab, the gray-green root rock of the Cornish coast. A vase of rushes, a subtle ornament. Not bad for making Perinculate, though. It deserved a little quiet time, so more Arab. Little water splashes on the stones of the well to nourish the mosses there. I think we'll put this in the Keeper's Lodge. All right, and the wonderful shape. So now we get to sort of take stock of what we're going to need to bring Trides Mahaira to the level we want it. So the wonderful shape, blessings and invocations of the triple knot recorded at a sanctuary in Cyprus notable for its weavers, sculptors, and gardeners. The roots go deep, the knots remain. The final invocation is one for the restoration of the roots to be spoken before an altar of the triple knot, but puzzlingly, it should not be spoken by any priestess of the knot, or even by one who has been initiated into their mysteries. So another reference towards speaking things before the altar of the triple knot. We have satisfaction. Now we may get that from Denzil as well, but we kind of got our work cut out for us now in terms of elements of the soul. So the first thing I'm going to do, let's take the Arab, we'll put that down. So what I need right now are 4 more memories, and those are pretty straightforward for me to get because I'm going to be able to use them. Okay, great. Also, before I go to Crowcross Sands, I can make a couple decisions. So, first of all, I'm going to get the stuff that Denzil can't get me, or like I'm going to get the memories that I know I can't get from talking to a character like Denzil. And apparently I neglected... Right. Let's put this over with the others. Perinculate, deadly. Use gloves to read text produced with this pigment. An ink of power. Okay. So 1 Arab for Trides Mahaira. I need 4 more memories. So we're getting 1 for Beguiling Melody. And I need Grail and Moon. Sorry, I got a little sidetracked, so... Okay, so again, Stolen Secrets we may get from Denzil. Bittersweet Certainties doesn't really help me here. Hindsight Intuitions. I'm just double checking that I'm not completely losing my mind. Pattern, storms, fear, regrets. Okay, so contradiction definitely helps. So an Exorcist's Field Manual. I'm a little reluctant. We could use the Shaft in this case, actually. So we go. Foresight doesn't help. Gossip doesn't. We will read the Salt, though. This needs... Which is this again? Kilisimi. Going crazy with the Kilisimi today. And then I think it's just another confounding parable, and that's it. So remembering one of the reasons why I kind of want to rush, or not rush, but why I want to work through these is I do need to clear up another shelf so that I can get all my satisfactions on an appropriate shelf. It actually might make sense to move... Maybe I should move the fear to... Yeah, so maybe get Secret Thresholds its own small shelf. Move Fear to this little shelf here. Then Intuitions can be combined. We'll worry about this later, but I think there's a couple things I can do to make the library a little more, tidy. But for the basic question of what I can bring to... Actually, there's one other thing I can do. I can use the old wound here. But I'm going to need about 30, well, not even 30 seconds, but I'm going to need a couple seconds. An afternoon spent profitably reading newspapers to the curious, writing affectionate letters for the lonely, steering farmers to the requirements of the Ministry of Agriculture. Let's bring back another air. I think I'm probably okay with just the 2, but I'm still going to bring it back. And yeah, once we get the sort of hurry the heck up warning from the game, we'll think a little bit more about what I use these elements of the soul for. But if there's a little inefficiency for today, I'm more okay with that, because our real goal here was about getting. I keep forgetting to give Denzel the winning move. Our real goal here was just to try and go as far as we can with the Trides Mahaira. So we've got the Tristan... Oh, actually, that's one thing for me to do. The other thing I think I'm gonna do is I did set aside the Larkabine Codex, and I believe this gives me the same aspects as Trides Mahaira, so I'll probably use this one as the last one to level up the skill. All right, Serpent Milk. No librarian of Hush House has ever died during the preparation of Serpent Milk. Thankfully, this was true yesterday and is still true today. He does a lot with silence, this man. So far that silence isn't really helping our goals. Okay, we are good once we add the winning move, so I can discuss a memory with my assistant. We shouldn't expect too much more from Denzel, if I'm completely honest. Oh, I think I did say I was going to bring the old wound up now, so... Let's go for... He's the Noctonary. Now, unfortunately, I don't have Moon anymore. So I'm going to have to settle for Health. So we don't have Winter. The Nectar is Health. Grail... Well, I guess I could use the Core. Okay. So, Edict's Martial. And we make the old wound. Explore an old wound to awaken the violent resonances within. So the reason I wanted to give myself a few seconds for this is that if I did it in exactly 1 minute, I wouldn't be able to use this old wound to level up Trides Mahaira. Okay, an Exorcist's Field Manual, a practical guide to troublesome dead, grounded in theory, but with a clear focus on their disposal by the redoubtable detective Ostiary, Wheellock of the Suppression Bureau. The dead usually avoid light, as the most immediate manifestation of eternity, which has no place for death. However, those dead uplifted by gold, which is to say touched by an actinic theoplasma, happily bought about in daylight and are perhaps strongest at noon. If you are dead but uplifted by green, that's the ring use blessing. The crown growth offers a similar but nastier benefit. This is how burgeoning risen come about, but there are different degrees of sentience and freedom depending on which growths are involved. The consciousness of one uplifted by green is always greatly altered, though. They never really seem like the same person. They may have dregs of their original souls, but these are often replaced by something else. The upshot, invariably, is that they need to be set firmly on fire. The Deaths of the Moon, an historical tract of the various forms of survival after death. When the heart no longer beats, the Grail may keep the spirit in the body, and an appetite is indicated to sustain. Alukites are the best known, but not the only of this nature. This is the waning mood mode. The full moon mode is the intensification of one element in the soul to a point where ordinary sustention is unstable. Our protector, the generous of hosts, began of this nature, and its generosity remains ungentle. It is possible for the body's health or the heart's core to outpace the other elements, so that a static mode becomes impossible and growth proceeds in dramatic stages until balance remanifests. So we need one more for the memories. And The Wind's Ruin, the second volume of the Meditations of Abbot Thomas of the Abbey of the Black Dove. Abbot Thomas speaks of his time as a raider when his name was not Thomas but Toke, scything the sea, striving for plunder. Abbot Thomas clearly regrets his storm years, and much of the book is taken up with thoughts on penitence, but there are hints that he also misses those years and the companionship of his sword brother, ship brother, Trygeave. So, let's level up Trades Mahaira again. I'll use the Arab. At last, I am something of an authority in this. Improve the skill to level 6. And we already know that we're going to need 6 elements of the... Sorry, we're going to need 6 memories to level this thing up. So, let me just double check where we're at. I believe I am restoring an Arab. Yeah, so we'll have that right away. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 elements. So, I mean, the easy answer is I just make money, but let's not completely throw out the possibility for something more interesting. So we'll use metal. Again, I'm going to prioritize the ones that Denzel may not be able to give me. And Confounding Parables, I think, is the last one. So, knowing that I have a little more flexibility now, let's take the health, and for this I'm going to get a stolen secret, I think. So that should give me some moon to work with. And then we can go to Nona's desk. I guess if I want moon, I can also read one of the intuitions. So I'm just trying to see if there's anything strange and interesting I can read. But yeah, I think the intuition is the best option here. Now, if I want, I can also go for an insurance policy, so I could bring satisfaction. I could... Actually, a gossip might be interesting. Although I don't have that many elements of the soul left. I actually think I've closed myself off, because what I could have done was I could have used the core up here, and then I could have used the... you know, it doesn't matter. Better now. So I'm going to wait it out. What I can do is I can just make money at the Sweet Bones at the very end of the day, but this gives me an option of making sure that I don't... that if I need, I can get another... I can get another memory really quick. So we could technically just use Denzel to open up the room right now, but I do want to make sure that we've got Trades Mahaira in the bag before I commit to anything else. That'll happen in about 30 seconds. I did mention stories and salons in the title, but unfortunately it turns out that we're really focused on skills today. That's not too bad. The one thing that's a little harder to recognize when I'm so focused on leveling these things up is that this is also giving me access to tougher books much faster. The wound is visible, the pain is not. Move gingerly while the pain lasts. So for instance, very quietly we've got Treatise Mahaira up to a point where it's equal to Leaves and Thorns, and we know we have 2 more levels for it. So we're potentially opening up things, or sorry, the Red Book of Brittany is a rose, but the 26 Enticements, 7 Torments, we... well, I'm so glad I have an audience that really loves pointing out when I make mistakes, because that's what humor is, right? Just taking the right to make fun of people for seemingly no reason other than that's just the reason. You just have license to do it, right? I'm so sorry I don't do perfect streams for people. I'm so sorry I haven't expressed how really annoying it is to have to deal with this seemingly every stream. 108. Ava de Wolf discourses on the 5th history, and particularly on those who are said to have passed over from it. The great hooded princes, the Knocklong, who ascended under the mother of ants, but now, so Ava claims, honor the horned axe. No, you know what? I have a perfectly fine sense of humor. This is not about meshing with mine. You can explain to me how that's funny, okay? Because this is not the first time I have regretted going later on a stream like this. And if you would like, by all means, explain to me the joke. Because I'm actually getting kind of tired of having to talk to you about this, to be perfectly frank. Ava de Wolf discourses on the 5th history, and particularly on those who are said to have passed over from it, the great hooded princes, the Knocklong, who ascended under the mother of ants, but now, so Ava claims, honor the horned axe. The great hooded princes call their library the Tomb of Lies, and this has given rise to a foolish tradition that the princes are habitual liars. Of course, in fact, truth flourishes when lies are slain. On the other hand, the princes do not say knowledge is power, but rather power is knowledge. Ava has, to her regret, never visited the library. She notes that it is said to be west of the Lion and north of Victory, and suggests that, although the princes are generally associated with India, their library might be further east. The account of Kanishk at the spider's door. Loch Kahuli, Kanishk's victim and lover, wrote this account, perhaps posthumously. Kanishk sought to become a name. In pursuit of that end, he made Loch Kahuli the vessel of his appetites, promising Loch that they would ascend together. At the spider's door, he betrayed his lover. The Chiliarch listened to it happen, and then forced Kanishk into his service. The Chiliarch cannot be denied. Loch Kahuli remained to write this work, and to describe the outer magics of struggle and contest. Stolen Histories. The agitator and pamphleteer Alexander Sparrow inveighs against the monstrous serpents, thieves of history. Sparrow acknowledges 5 histories, insists the 3rd history may be overrun by coils, warns the 5th history is already lost. Sparrow, with his usual paranoia, appears to be conflating the horror of the Worm Wars and the Great Writhing with the activities of the Great Hooded Princes. Still, he draws thought-provoking comparisons between the princes, normally conceived as exotic Knocklong, and the widely feared worms. Why did I try to get a fear? I think I actually just blew it in terms of memories. But because I have the core, I can try and save it really quick by drinking the water. Drink the stuff. This will consume the beverage. If it's a whole bottle, consider serving it first so you don't drink the whole thing. Now I think I might have... Let me just make sure that I didn't... Ah, crumbs, where did I put this thing? Sorry, I've completely lost where that book went. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to see where this gets shelved again. Okay, good to know. I misshelved. Those indignities perpetrated by the deceitful fraternity of Obliviates. It is not clear whether CROD, who is identified only by his initials, was in fact an initiate of the Obliviate Order of Immortal Adepts. He wrote in the 16th century after the order, if he is to be believed, had passed the height of its power. 58. That they did claim inheritance from the traditions of the House of Leith, but they have disregarded both its most sacred and most beautiful ceremonies where they are not found convenient. 59. 71. The Glassfinger toxin is no mere assassin's convenient for the Oblividiots to confine to the disposal of their enemies. It has higher uses. Certainly it is a great matter of winter, but I have already outlined the technique by which it may be fitted for its ultimate destiny. All right. And the sea does not regret. Eason Fekri, one-time Secretary Salvant of the Curia of the Isle, responsible for the Curia's healing efforts, writes of his experiences in Brandkrug and hints at his travels elsewhere. The sea does not regret the tide, Fekri writes, for when the tide has passed, it leaves its traces on the sand, which traces are the sea's memory. Fekri is a keen fisherman and speaks glowingly of the fish suppers of Brandkrug. He also admits that his enthusiasm for the bounty of the sea has altered him, that before he came to Brandkrug he consumed only those things found in the earth. I was the greater thereby, but all of us give up what we were to become what we are. Sea spray, depth sorrow. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But we're at 6. So what I did here, the reason I drank the water was so that I can get the... I drank the water so that I can get the taste. The taste will have 1 grail, and I may wind up losing the Arab for the next day, which is a bit of a shame. But at the very least, we've got Tradis Mahaira to a point where I can use the Larkabine Codex to level it up. And I should put the Wild Surmise in bed. He does a lot with silence, this man. So I do need to use Denzil to open up the trapped cell. A sign outside the cell reads, "Warning, do not enter while safety measures are armed." I was very scared for a moment there when he got bounced back. But of course, if we don't get Grail out of this, yeah, there we go. The water of the Isle has a very faint, very distinctive taste, sometimes described as apple shroomy. When I thought I'd understood, I'd only begun. Improve the skill to level 7. And I do apologize for the fact that my enthusiasm for this has just completely vanished, but I think there is something really frustrating with the fact that I specifically addressed this issue with that chatter in the stream. And I'm not going to lie, that is not the first time that that person has said something like that and has made me regret streaming lately. So I am sorry the tone is completely shifted. Unfortunately, it's not something I can always control. But I do thank all of you for hanging out tonight. I think I'm just going to have to become a little bit more liberal with enforcement mechanisms. But let's talk about what we're going to do in the next stream, because I really don't want to end on somebody who is really not worth the time. So, we've got a few things to do. I think I'm going to start moving the various luggage and items in the house, just to give myself a visual reminder to work on them. So the plan's going to be to read the Lark. Actually, I can put the Larkabine Codex to work right away. So we'll add the Tryst here. We need 5 more moon. I can get by with a 4 moon, and then... well, actually, we don't even need to do that. So I can master this mystery enough. Actually, and you know what? I can go to Crowcross Sands with the moon, so then we can add the metal here. Oh, right, but then I need to add the lunar globe. So the plan on that one is that'll be what gets me my last points on Tradisma Hyra. So, well, one obvious step is also to open a package with the Whist. So, what ship lost this? There is probably some sense in seeing who I'll invite to the house. We know we're not going to unlock any other rooms with... like, so this... we'll get what's inside the room, but we know we're not getting access to any new room. So I can't see why... essentially, nothing's really changed in terms of my decision to hire certain people to open rooms. I think what we're going to wind up doing for the Dawn Period rooms, I'm going to... worry about these, but I think we're going to save the... I think I'm still going to save the sealed vaults, which is going to put a limit in terms of how deep I can go into the house in certain seasons. I'll probably talk to Mr. Kill or Mrs. Kill. So I'm trying to... it's probably not a good hour for me to try and plan out the rest of the day. So the real division that I have is we're at the end of the season. So I don't want a huge surplus of lessons on the odd chance we wind up in Numa. but I don't want to waste the day either. So, one option I have is just use my elements of the soul to generate the memories that I need, which is not terrible, but because I'm not, I kind of have everything that I need for the next Salon, it just sort of means I'm sitting around, maybe I'm doing some kind of crafting or something like that, but there just really isn't a whole lot that is going on. I suppose I can try and make some of the elements of the soul that I don't already have, something like, an invincible audacity using some of the extra some of the extra memories that the training dummy would let me use. Another option that I have, so if I take a look at the my list of things that I want to do, so we have Wolf Stories, Path and Pilgrim, Stone Stories, Tridesma Hira, Edicts Inviolable, Applebright Euphonies, Rhyme and Remembrance, Drums and Dances as potential candidates to level things up. So if I take a look at the shelf that I want to clear, so the Crossing to Noon, that gives me 2 memories with Moon and Grail, which would mean that I can put that towards Edicts Inviolable, and Edicts Inviolable right now only has 2, so effectively that's going to be a total of 5 memories that I need to generate in order to completely use up the Crossing to Noon. Intimations of Skin, that's Desires and Dissolutions. So I don't think we have Desires and Dissolutions at the level we want it yet anyway. Actually, let me just double check that, because... Nope, that's already committed. So that would be another example of Grail and Moon. So same argument for Edicts Inviolable. In fact, we could theoretically take it up 4 levels. Although, again, I want to be clear in terms of number of elements of the soul that I have. We also needed 2 more for Applebright Euphonies. Now, that's a little bit harder to say because Applebright Euphonies is now at level 4. So if I want to bring that up to level 6, let me just double check that's where they need to be. Yeah. So that would be 4 and 5. So essentially we need 9 elements of the soul for that. Again, that's manageable, but it's an example about how I'm starting to use sort of the majority of my elements of the soul on a relatively small number of lessons. And then a more practical one would be to observe that I think something like Drums and Dances would be particularly helpful because of their heart. Oh, no, Quenchings and Quellings. Yeah, no, okay. So Drums and Dances is useful because of the extra crafting it gives me, but not to the extra books that it lets me read. And Drums and Dances is actually a bit of a tougher one for me to level up because it needs Heart and Nectar. And you'll notice Moon and Grail. I think this is Forge and... Knock and Sky. Glass Blowing, I really should have known was Sky. Pentiments and Precursors is Grail and Scale. Now that does at least help me out with Stone Stories, so that's interesting in that regard. Observations on the Peacock Door, again, that's going to be one that gives me Edge and Moon, so practically I'm using that to level up things like Wolf Stories. And then Exercises in the Continuity of Self, that's Winter and Moon, and because I have Rhyme and Remembrance that I need to get up 3 levels, I'd probably just use it for that. So the tricky part that I have here is that all of these are viable options. The question is how many elements of the soul I want to dedicate to leveling them up and making sure that I don't have any lessons at the end of the season. If I have some left over at the end of the season, so be it. It just means that I wind up in a potentially awkward spot for next Numa. And then the last thing I can point out is that if I want, I do have Iotic Essence. I can make more Iotic Essence. I have a number of different things that I can do that are related towards, brewing these various inks. Actually, on that note, I can also make the invitations for the Salon that we're going to host here. We've got everything in place. We just need to do the invitations. So that's the kills, which we invite on the day, and then Connie and Wakefield. Connie and Zachary, or Lee and Wakefield. But I mean, that can be done on the same day. This is one of the rare cases where we'll probably invite everybody to the Salon the day of. But yeah, I think the more I think about it, the better it would be for me to think about this on with a clear head. So we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you for those of you who are watching, and particularly for those of you who are left. I am going to try and find somebody to host tonight. Yeah, no worries, Vanguard. And again, I'll try and get back to you as soon as I can about how much I can help you with your testing, but if not, best of luck for your test, and I'm sorry to be a little bit of a flake on this. It's just a very busy time for me. Not too many people online at this hour, but Kilgore Trout is a very late streamer. He is a fellow Canadian. Apparently I also can't spell his... Can't spell his username. Kilgore Trout is currently playing Ultima Underworld. I don't know if it's 1 or 2. Looks like it's 2. But he is somebody who I met through the GOG channel. He is tends to play a lot of classic games and tends to play it on original hardware. He also does his box and movie hype, so he sometimes brings out some of the original boxes for games back when, you know, game developers and software developers in general had to convince you that you were getting something of value by packaging it in a cardboard box. But he shares those, he shares his movie collection, and I don't know, it's a pretty interesting one, especially because a lot of these, he gets to talk about them as games that were sort of released, he played them when they came out and released, and so there's sort of this interesting, almost preservation or historical account. Hey, Revive Snow, thank you very much for stopping by. I know it's a belated shout out for you, but at least this time I wasn't talking about the consumption of Irish babies. But Revive Snow's got a wonderful, actually also is a late night Canadian streamer, but somebody who I have a lot of fun watching whenever I get to watch. You've not read A Modest Proposal, Vanguard Master? Anyways, again, thank you everybody for hanging out. Those of you who are still here, and we will see you on Monday when I'm better rested. Good night, everybody.